Alright guys, so today we're going to be reacting to why Europe is insanely well designed. Why is very designed? Because I think, again, in my personal opinion, they have very strong art and culture for generations, right? So that gives them a great idea to determine what works, what doesn't, right? And also United States, where I live, we're just a new country. We're trying to figure out things around, right? So I'm always amazed with European culture since I'm a classical musician myself. So piano is my thing, and I'm always going back to those great years. I study, the Renaissance period, Baroque period, the classical period, Romantic period, even the post-Romantic period, what they call the contemporary or the 20th century. And I'm always amazed so how much Europe has, overcome during those years. So let's jump in. Why Europe is insanely well designed.
This is a map of Europe's mass transit railway system
Look at
across
that.
33 countries. The yellow lines indicate the presence of a train line, and as you can see, it's very dense. There are hardly any spaces where there isn't any coverage for railways. Now, if we compare this to a map of railroad tracks in the US, it's a different story. While parts of the US have some good mass transit, there are large areas of the country which isn't covered by Amtrak, the nation's largest passenger railroad service.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of native land there, right? So a lot of land owned by the states. It just state and federal government kind of thing. But yeah, that's a lot of land that's not even covered.
Let me show you another map, this time of high-speed rail in Europe. Now obviously, high-speed railways aren't going to be as common as regular speed railways as they require excellent design, strict planning, and massive investment. And yet, as we can see, high-speed rail is present in Europe, which is a stark contrast to the US, as you can see from this map. While the US does have some higher speed rail, like the Aquila line in the Northeastern Corridor, it's hardly an effective map of transport solutions. And the Aquila line isn't really that fast either. It can reach about 150 miles per hour, but averages less than 70. This is not the case for Europe's insanely well-designed railroad system. And you have to remember that Europe's system accomplishes this while spanning 33 different nations in a very diverse continent. And I know what you're probably thinking. This is just because Europe is smaller than the United States, which simply isn't true. While the European Union is smaller than the US, continental Europe has an area that is about 1.04 times as much as the US. So we can dismiss this argument that the United States can't be that well designed because it's too big. Europe simply is better designed. But if you're American, you might not understand why railroad tracks or public transport as a whole is so important. I mean, driving a car works fine, right? Well, no. And Europe showcases why a primary focus on private transportation is so detrimental to a well-functioning transit system. Look at these maps. They show the US road network versus the EU's. And as you can see, the EU's road network is not nearly as impressive as the US's. And yet, when you look at some of the most congested cities in the world, European countries don't feature particularly prominently in the global rankings. This is pretty shocking information because you'd assume that the country with a more expansive road network has a lot less congestion, especially considering the United States has devoted lots of time and money to their highways. So how come Europe is less congested when they have fewer roads? Well, it all comes down to disincentivizing the use of cars and, most importantly, making an attractive alternative. Europe does this by having both.
I was gonna mention this. The Amtrak is not as appealing. You saw that train, that high-speed train. That, oh my God, that's nice. You look at that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it looks nice.
Europe does this by having both private and public transportation infrastructure, which technically the US has as well, it's just a lot worse. But on top of this, Europe makes it pretty expensive to buy, own and use a car. This is achieved by having high taxes on vehicles and gasoline. In fact, here's a map of worldwide gasoline prices. As you can see, European nations are in the top rankings, while the US lies at the bottom, charging very little. But let me be very clear, it's only a good idea to make it expensive to drive a car if you have an attractive alternative, which America doesn't, but Europe does. I mean, obviously this wouldn't
Good
work in
point.
the US with its current transportation infrastructure, but in Europe, this is a great strategy because you make the roads less congested for those who actually need them and give
Yep.
everyone else an affordable and efficient alternative, being Europe's amazing public transport like the trains on the railways. This is arguably the
beautiful.
better strategy because
Yeah,
even
look at
though the
that.
vast majority of Americans have
Yeah,
access to
you see that? You see that tunnel? We're not there. New York City, we're not there. Chicago, but we're not there, man. LA, oh man.
vehicles at around 91% and gas is comparatively cheap, it still leaves 9% who don't have access to vehicles. What are these people who can't afford a car supposed to do? I mean, sometimes public transport isn't even
And I used to live in Wyoming. I remember there was no train. The only train that was there was the cargo train. Of course, you cannot get transportation there. But man, the state of Wyoming is big, folks. It's a big state. It's not a small state, but it's completely landscape empty. So you have to call like a private car company. They have to pick you up. Then they have to travel 7 hours. Then you can go to Colorado and Denver, and then just get a flight. But it was empty. There was no train there, man. No transport trains. It's we need more of that. Yeah, I
an
agree.
option or simply too expensive for many. So you've now actively excluded those who aren't exactly the most well off from society. To make matters worse, some US cities actually got rid of their public transport to make room for more cars.
Yeah,
I'm not joking.
we did that.
American streetcars like trams
Yeah.
were actually removed to make way for bigger
Yeah, that went into effect in Puerto Rico, and they moved the public transport from certain towns in Puerto Rico, like Mayagüez, San Germán, so on and so forth.
roads. Absolutely insane. Compare that to Oslo, Berlin, and Madrid, where discussions are underway to restrict or even exclude most cars from the city center. And let's not forget that when you have cars, you also need somewhere to park them. And this is where things start to become rather ridiculous. You see, the United States has 2 billion parking spaces for 250 million cars. That's 8 parking spaces per vehicle. In Europe, it's pretty much a 1-to-1 with around 250 million public parking spaces for 300 million cars. But to emphasize the ridiculousness of this even further, the area that the US dedicates for car parking is actually larger than the area dedicated for housing people. It's honestly unbelievable that people are being squeezed out of American cities due to regulators wanting to make more room for parking spaces. This simply wouldn't fly in the EU, as it has a whole policy dedicated to improving urban planning. See, the EU spent 100
But it's just, but look at you, how you guys living. You living like very close to each other, kind of thing. You know, the United States is big. We have space, man. We have space over here. We have space, real space. So having a car, it just makes sense, man. But Europe cannot afford that. Europe is, compared to United States, I don't know. It says here that it's not, but it's big. It's small. Europe is small, and you can look like everybody like cramped each other, right? Like, we need a car here in the United States, man. Like these lands are. I'm telling you, I drove from New York all the way to Virginia. It's far. It's far. It took me to 12 hours to get down there. It's not close. It's not close. Virginia is not even that far away. And I drove from New York to Wisconsin. It took me 3 days. And that's just in the middle of the country. 3 days, almost 4 days. It's big. It's a big, it makes sense just to keep Europe nice and clean. You want Europe to always look nice, right? United States, we have land here, like land. You can just drive here for hours. You don't see anything. So
115 billion euros between 2014 and 2020 to improve city design by making it smarter, greener, and more connected. Simply meaning they allocated funds to make their cities more efficient, more connected, and better for the environment. And better for the environment they really are.
Yep.
As the average resident in a typical Western US city, such as Los Angeles or Phoenix, contributes approximately 6 times more carbon to the atmosphere per capita than an average European city resident. This is purely the result of not having effective transport solutions, which saves resources and allows people to move about efficiently. And exactly that,
I'm up for it.
moving about efficiently.
I'm all for it. Especially in the cities, we have a lot of cars. That's true. Especially big cities. Cars are cramped up, right? And I would love to see more of that public transportation. I used to live in Milwaukee. They have public transportation there. Beautiful. Very beautiful. Um, One of those railroads, local railroads, kind of thing. It's beautiful. It's nice. But then the public transportation, where they're big trucks, it's high, man. It's just we need to fix so many things in the United States. We're getting there, Europe. We're getting there.
Is something most of Europe's citizens are able to do as a result of the
See, it looks
European
nice,
Union.
clean.
See, most of Europe's nations are in the European Union, which gives the EU citizens a number of perks, which includes a free travel area. This has been one of the most important achievements of the EU, as it makes it possible for an EU citizen to travel freely to other EU member states and stay for up to 3 months. All they need is a passport or even just an ID card. No visas, no trips to embassies, no form filing, just head straight over. This makes it incredibly easy to travel, study and work in other countries and communities. And having this level of centralization is very important to good design, as it gives the smartest people the opportunity to work where they are most useful. And since good design obviously requires a lot of complicated problem solving and planning, this is very smart. Another smart thing is the incredible biking infrastructure we see in Europe, perfectly illustrated by this map of bike path density in Europe. All the purple lines are bike paths, and there's clearly a lot of them, especially towards the left side of the map, but that's just because this is the home of the Dutch, the Netherlands. Now, the funny thing is, I won't be able to compare this to a map of bike path density in the United States, because such a map hasn't been made. At least I wasn't able to find any, and I can only wonder why. But anyway, what Europe and also the European Union has achieved is pretty remarkable.
We do bike a lot, but that not the same as the Europeans. You see what I'm saying? You only see biking to work in the cities, kind of thing. But even in the city, you can't that much. But we think about biking like an exercise activity, so it's kind of different. Which it's not bad, but if you go biking, if you use a bike to go to work, I think that's a great idea.
As it's hard to think of another set of such diverse countries where you would be able to travel so freely, in an efficient and inexpensive manner. I mean, you can literally get from Paris to Amsterdam, for example, in just 3 hours for around $30. Imagine being able to travel all over Asia without any border crossings, checks, or visas, and being able to stay for months at a time. That would be truly amazing. And let's not forget that Europe...
No. We need to check our people. We need to make sure that people are well documented, and make sure that you're not crossing illegally. No, we have to keep things. They just see now you going over. No, we cannot do that. People make sure you have your documentation on point. You don't get into trouble. This is something I disagree with video. I do agree connecting countries to railroads. Let's say connecting one day from Russia, from all the way to United States to Russia, through Alaska and Russia, right? So the state of Alaska, then Russia. I think that's a great idea. That's a great vision, and that was something that was going to happen. But politics. But I think even though that's a great way to just move towards the future, make sure you have your documentation.
European design has always been distinctive and very successful. In fact, the continent's history of design and interconnectedness serves as a model for the rest of the world. But even though Europe and the EU are pretty great and have amazing infrastructure, they obviously aren't perfect. And I'd love to hear some of the reasons it might not be, so leave a comment down below if you have some thoughts on this. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Very nice video. Very nice video. A lot to learn here. A lot to unpack. Clearly the Europe infrastructure, they have the new modern and antiquated, which is great. A little bit cramped, so there's not a space for parkings, man. And I think Europe has done a good job, make sure they can mitigate or minimize having these kind of problems. Of course, in the United States, in some of the cities, we have a traffic problem. You're right, and I don't know how can we fix that. There has to be a way we can fix that without depriving the privilege of having a car. I love to have my car. I love having my car. I love to just go around myself. I love to just enjoy myself with my family. I love to have my car. But Having the option of having a public transportation not only is a great idea, but there has to be high regulations when it comes down to that, because safety net. Make sure it's safe. Make sure it's clean. Make sure there's no homeless epidemic. Make sure you know what I'm saying. A lot of problems in the United States come from things that is not from the infrastructure, but the communities. We have right now we have a homeless problem in some of the big cities, and a lot of this homeless problem has contributed to the back of, let's say, not moving forward, right? It's not incentivize people to come in and really invest in United States, and we don't want that. We want to, you know, have some more ideas of Europe. I think this is a great idea to keep our street clean, everything nice, and I love my cars. But I think we can incorporate certain things like here. If you live in where I live in north of Wisconsin, you want to go to Milwaukee, you want to go to Chicago, you can do so with a train. But again, we don't have a lot of those options. I think there's an Amtrak here, but there's not multiple railroads that you can take to go down to different part of the United States. And hopefully we are moving towards that. Hopefully. But let me know what you guys think. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. I'm out.